says I'm live, and so if I am, then so be it. This is story time. WNDC, which stands for We in the Crib and You Ain't. Well, uh, here's the long and the short of the whole thing. All right. Um, see, I am really, really, really uh, in my feels today because I got a story to tell. Uh, and I would guess that this will be a part of my therapy of sorts. Let me first say this is for entertainment purposes only. Uh, so, come on, man. Now, before I get started into this, I just want to let you know WNDC and NDC stands for We in the Crib and You Ain't NDC in the Crib today. Now, uh, depending on where this goes, uh, we'll see what we'll see. But it's been a long time. I mean, a long time. And, well, uh, I've shared quite a few bits and pieces of these stories, and I really didn't prepare to just hop on, but here I am. Now, wrote a song about it, want to hear it, here you go. Uh, now, what we have here, and within good reason, is the mere fact that here we sit in this date of our Lord or whatnot during the age of Aquarius, the big reset. And spiritually speaking, it's been pretty true to form on so many different levels. And I think it doesn't even really compare to the little info we got back in the day with an earlier video on the 2012, blah, 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 2000s. And uh, quite funny enough, um, Prince made that song 2000 party over, oops, out of time, but tonight we're gonna party like it's 1999. I'm gonna tell you right now, in 2026, right here past our summer solstice and whatnot, I can honestly admit that very few people can possibly even imagine the actual um, intensity that was 2000 party over, oops, out of time. But tonight we're gonna party like it's 1999, and this came out before 1999, but just enough time that even as we went through everything else, a lot of people don't really recall how 9/11 really flipped the script on our uh, memory of sorts. That was 2001. Now, uh, now we're in this big recess, and I swear my bingo card's been thrown out a long time ago, and I'm pretty sure a lot of y'all, are just stuck on trying to keep your head in the local sanity due to the mere fact that no matter how much we see all this onslaught of world events and things like that coming, we really honestly can't put the brakes on none of this. So, little story about it. Here it goes. Back right about the point I got out of the Marine Corps about mid 80s, 85s, whatnot. And instantly I decided I don't want no more uniforms and blah, 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 this, that, and the other because, well, yeah. Um, and so I went back into clubs and whatnot and music, and found myself quickly going into DJing and managing uh, and actually with the record pool and whatnot put me directly into the music industry to such a degree that you know Jack the Rapper was in Atlanta, and that was like our home event to support. And well, I cut my teeth on a lot of that era. I mean, so much so that I've got memories of that era of right at that point in time where uh, we were saying bye bye Miss America Pie. My Chevy to the levee, but the Chevy was dry. Well, this was a whole different era. This was an era right before crack kills applejack. It was actually during the time of my prerogative of new edition of uh, artists and performers, and more so than musicians. Now, right prior to that, we had Earth, Wind, and Fire, and all those other bands and whatnot. And even though they were good at figures, we also knew them good as musicians, and we saw these instruments being utilized and whatnot. We had stereophonic sound, and there were really left and right channels, and digital hadn't even gone that far. And well, tape and vinyl was the best that we had from that, and we really bask in back in that era where sound was about a pound and lights was about a voltage and amperage more so than the dancing, dancing. Dun, dun, dun. Now in today's world, and so uh, that era was really special because a lot of things happened during that era. That was that video killed the radio star plus. And then there was this concept of what was going on right around that era. And there's a book or two out about these people, the Hitmen. The Hitmen were a group of non people of color, Zionistic driven people with a certain mixture of a faith and a gangster. And they all just got in their minds, you know what, let's take this. And can't beat them, beat them, you know. And music changed. Everything of music changed. We with that whole electronic stuff came and sampling and all of that, and that really changed a lot for a lot of people who will probably never even think that deeply about the way music makes them feel. And yet, these generations today have very little memory of or recollection of a favorite musician that actually they enjoyed their craft, not just the way they dance across the moves that they have or how big they show is. Mm-mm. Actually being able to have that unplugged kind of thing, man, they can just blow your mind on a street corner right here in your living room. Mm-mm. Nobody wants Chris Brown and Bobby and all those other people dancing on their furniture. No, I don't blame them, but the mumble rapping, and they was going, keep that shit down. I digress. The Hitmen. The Hitmen were the Tommy Mottellos, Clyde Davis, a couple other cats. And I'd even like to include the UK leg of this grand takeover. Prior to these guys getting together and deciding to pull this shit off, um, we had independence. There was a better possibility that you can be found in your stardom. There was a better need for that, and there was a better appreciation of performance. Locally and whatnot. We had the Chitlin Circuit, all these other things, and these people were run by their own little smaller syndicates of people who basically they used to say, nothing says thank you like cash. And so being up there and performing, and they throwing money and pennies at you is tribute, and not necessarily waiting around to see how much of a percentage you're gonna get off of the amount of sales of people listening or whatnot. The Hitmen are the people you have to think for all of that, because they intentionally came over with a takeover of severe proportions. Only Kanye can kind of describe it to you, but who's listening to him? And yet we're talking about the hitman, especially Clyde Davis. Clyde Davis, you know, just basically was driven to be a larger than life kind of, so what kind of image. And this dude was bold. He was bold, and he was dastardly and pervertedly dastardly, and you know, as a person of color, I've always had a beef with how certain people from certain areas decide how they want to, you know, recall what is and what ain't. Like the era prior to that, in the 70s, late 60s, Lyndon B. Johnson. Nobody wants to, oh, we sit back and we think about the Kennedys, and yet, a lot of us conservative POCs will swear up and down that Lyndon B. Johnson and the Voting Rights Act and all these other things that occurred during that era that we now go out and protest. Oh, they're about to kill those things. And you know what? It's not going to change the thing outside of the mere fact that if you know how deep it was, Roe versus Wade, everybody's thinking about this other thing. And the chick who all this is doggone surrounded by, she ended up having a doggone baby. She swore up and down was, the product of black folk raping. And gosh darn it, that's why she needed and wanted that abortion. And man, we got to keep this Roe versus Wade up. And by the time that it got to the Supreme Court, she'd already had that baby and was hoping that she didn't have to go up there and still keep on this persona of a story that wasn't even true, and she had a perfectly white baby. And I'm not trying to get racial about this, but we talking about hitmen. And there's none of them that are a person of color. They love black folks. As long as they didn't knock their daughter up and marry her. Another story. This is some, imagine this. This is something that only revisiting Epstein could give you a certain kind of mindset of the life and lifestyles that this music industry and these hitmen, created and fueled to such a degree that today, it's almost like King Ding Dong, the witch is dead, and you sit back and he's 90. What? Man. There are musicians and people in the music industry right now that are living off of this musical plantation that they created, but these hitmen basically created and manipulated and enforced to such a degree that it's kind of like the whole jokes of the old form of slavery where, what, is master sick? Oh no, I don't know what we're gonna do. Now that beautiful man that put so many of us out here to this, that, and the other, and you're going, look, man. 99% of most of the people you adore died broke. This guy died, and his pocket change is only 350 million or 850 million. It doesn't really matter because it's all of it. That and the hitman, they all of it. They proved that, hey man, on one phone call they can do a thing, and that's everybody. Nobody else does this. And by the time that they bought out everyone and then made pop music, for Clive Davis and his invention of pop music, there would be no A-list stars. There would just be, whoever is up on the top and people are digging. Then all of a sudden pop music came out. Pop music was their control over what exactly is the highest earning big star. I remember working for labels like when I worked with A&M. I used to remember how my primary artist was Sting, Janet Jackson, Shanice, Barry White, Supertramp, were okay. My job was to call up all the record stores and whatnot and ask them to, when Billboard calls, and ask for your charts, who's trending and whatnot. Why don't you do us a favor and kind of keep our A-list staying, Janet, Supertramp, Shanice, maybe a little Barry White, depending on the pecking order. Up in them charts, man. I want you to keep us up in at least the top 10, top 20 or whatnot until we can, get you this new record and whatnot. And then, and for your help in doing that, we're going to send you down. We're going to prime the pump, is what they call it. Priming the pump is when you had a record, people liked it and they could sell it. And so they got these record stores, and what they would do is they would send an abundance of this product, and you could, for free, and you could damn near give it away. But when you do so, you can also keep, reporting how many copies we have. And that's the reason why lots of artists, through these hitmen and whatnot, invented this little monkey dance that they do in their circus, where by the time that they find out how deep they've basically manipulated you into having pockets that only the IRS, ain't trying to hear none of this, where your money's at, or why you didn't know that all this is being, on your back. And well, I know it's a fun ride, but there's nothing worse than having to repay, because the interest is, when you sit back there and you're going, man, our favorite stars are millions and millions of dollars in debt and taxes. And how did they get that way when they got money and people like that? Because most of these people don't know how these hitmen and whatnot had this industry so set into such a level that it was industry slavery. There were people that were out there that would sign these deals, get all this cash, got multi-album deals, and not realize that this cash and whatnot they just gave you, that's for all of those. You want any more extra money, then we want more of a promise that now this is going to be for your 5th album. You ain't had one yet, but here, take this money, and that's all right, man. As long as I can just eat. And the Hitman, Clive Davis. Back in that era when I was still DJing and starting to evolve into this music industry stuff and whatnot, I run into him right on an era where I got a chance to witness him in person several times, and his pompous demeanor that, when you home and whatnot, I don't care where you're from, your ass ain't gonna doggone, act like, I'm insignificant. I don't give a fuck who you are, man. You walk out this damn door and, we can have your ass, you ain't got good security, and that's life. And yet, people don't really have an understanding of the concept of Mr. Charlie. Well, if you wanted to be in this industry, you wanted fame. Well, fame cost. Fame cost so much that Clive Davis lived 97 years today, corrupting the minds, the lives, and the mindset of the masses, who really honestly need people like us, need people like them. You need people like them so you can point your finger and say, that's the bad guy. But the bad guy, one of them, the only other dude that was that kind of, can't stand this mofo, and yet everybody else is trying to act like, oh, why you want to talk about it, is that dude that suckered Tina Turner into turning on Ike, even though, everybody else want to say anything about that. Tina was gangster as hell, and if you don't even know how gangster she was, and ask Randy Jackson. Yeah. I don't think you seem to understand, man. The era when these hitmen came up was so gangster that at a certain point in time in their heyday, you couldn't do nothing without them. They had all the studios, all of this, that, and the other. Still to this day, but this is what where even Kanye said it's everything. It's too late. They got everything, And so, as I stated in this post, I really honestly felt some kind of way about even, you know, getting long winded and talking about all this that you might, want to hang around for or not. But I was there. I was in ATL, came back home, the whole nine, doing a Jack the Rapper. I was just witness to a lot of things that a lot of people didn't think people were watching or remembering. But for me, it's a part of my dysfunction. My mind sees things in vision and not in letters. For some strange reason, in my now elderly state, and I never really thought that I would actually have such a vivid recollection of errors that most people want to forget. Period. Oh, I just don't even believe. And for me, I'm still searching for, man, I wish I could really see me in my eyes then, even more so than, if you can go back and tell yourself, man, I'm gonna tell you, man, you know, um, that sounds kind of fun and whatnot. But uh, I went back and just watched some uh, some videos or whatnot from right there about 1999, and I'm like, man, why does that look like the 70s? It don't even look like, man. Were we that little? Were we? Man, was that the fashion that I never thought that we were wearing? Oh, man, and how things really, really changed in our recollection. I mean, how people would feel certain elements that don't exist anymore. People don't know what stereo felt like. They don't know what, you know, um, dialing numbers and remembering uh, things and, and having to do party lines and how hardwired we were in connection and what did we do with our spare time when we didn't have so many things that today take up more of our spare time than we have spare time. And yet, I'm just talking about a few years past, and now in my elderly state, I never really realized how difficult this problem is until you realize most of the people who can remember having to write out, the years in 19, uh, would be kind of awkwardly amazed at the mere fact that we're living in an era where people were born after 2000 over, oops, and they're perfectly good adults with kids, even grandkids. And yet you can sit back and be like, man, I remember back in the day, and go way too far. You got people out here now that can't really understand what you mean when you try to tell them how life was back in the Kennedy, Lyndon B. Johnson, Nixon, Ford, Carter, Reagan era. They can't see the amount of distance going in all of this. But then we're here talking about not just the Hitmen, but Clive. But this is bigger than Clive. This is bigger than Gaza. This is bigger than a homeland. This is bigger than a faith. This is bigger than a Holocaust. This is bigger than a 1%, a power, a Epstein, because it's all of that back in an era when the Hitmen slid in at the perfect time. Oh, I remember, man, that's messed up because, man, I remember back in the day when Bill Cosby, a lot of people, not just him, wanted to buy into this industry. A lot of them. I remember coming up at a certain era where I can recall now the amount of production groups of people of other cultures and faiths and whatnot that stood on their own. I mean, like Little Richard on their own, like Osley's on their own, like Chitten Circuit on their own, like the whole blues circuit on their own. I mean, one of the things uh, that Clyde didn't really touch that much was all of that down south, good and down home other shit, the blues. I mean, not just the blues, but the ones that don't even start on the ones and two, and talk about, oh, and they blah, blah, blah. You'd be like, man, I ain't never heard that before in my life. And they sit back there and the whole culture can name all the stuff that you can name, but also what you know about this article, what you know about this, and you like, I was up in an era where as a DJ, I was one of the earlier, newer uh, DJs that were actually um, uh, aware and equipped uh, to program house music, club music, disco, this, that, and the other in a different state than just the Studio 54 and whatnot. I used to make mixtapes. This is where WNDC come from. Originally, I used to make these mixtapes called WNDC. WNDC stands for We in the Crib and You Ain't. This is just a alternative to radio, I used to say, and I would make a 90-minute program of certain specific or kind of mirage or collage of music that would go into that direct. I had Kill the Song and Dance. I had uh, Sooner or Later You End Up Fucking, which is really a tape that people would put in when they actually was like, yo, man, I can't believe that shit really, honestly. Things that when you know you were going to be in this kind of mindset, that title actually would assure you that nothing in that presentation is going to fuck up that mood. And so it became, slightly, you know, uh, popular way back then. And well, if you've been following me or whatnot, you can check my receipts, but during that era, uh, I remember before I went to uh, SEMA Distribution, RCA, you know, um, A&M, all of that. I was working with a friend of mine, David Ackle, Dwayne Alexander, nice cat. He died just recently in some horrific kind of manner. Uh, Lots of them were, followed this life. Now we can call it Diddyism, huh? Anywho, um, and yet we talking about them hitmen. We talking about Clive. We talking about the mere fact that I removed myself from this industry, literally, at least 8, 10 years or more before Clyde decided to write a biography and admit I'm bi. I think you've been more than goddamn bi. You manipulatively one of the most masochistically sadistic motherfuckers with that much power. Everybody, oh man, this, that, and the other. I'm like, come on, man. First off and foremost, all right, if you didn't catch how slick this dude had grown to be by how he was so uh, driven to explain or to project to people, just how he is, what he do. Understand this. Go back and look at his speech or whatnot at Whitney Houston's funeral at her mama and daddy's church. look at the mannerisms, you know, kind of like, you know, some people go, you know, step on somebody's foot, break their toe, tear up their shoe, they got blood dripping. You didn't mean to do it. Wasn't malicious, but you, oops, I'm sorry. But first and foremost, when you sitting back and you got an open gash and your foot broken and the pain is beyond what you even signed up for, and yet the person who did that basically replies back in, oh, I'm sorry. You know, you can go, look, man, I don't care how much I like you right now. The mere fact that I'm still within this pain and you can't even do 911 or fix this or this, that, and the other, let alone the mere fact that I need you for you to show me that you have learned that, you know, damn, can you please explain to me how in the hell you invite me to the trauma that I have to deal with, that you basically just feel the need to basically just sit back and go, come on, man. Slavery was just, see, Clyde Davis and them hitmen were not just people that you know you meet when you're walking down the street. They were really good to us black folks, just like the NAACP swears up and down the doggone Civil Rights Act was real good to us, and doggone Mr. Lyndon B. Johnson, you know, he's a good man to give us all that, you know. And I'm going, yeah, so, you know, killing Kennedy or, you know, being perverted, can't stand doggone, you know, J. Edgar Hoover, but both of them was just as kinky and perverted and evil and couldn't stand motherfuckers. And well, they could always, and he loved using, you know, uh, the director of FBI's little secret about how black he was in the little blue panties. And yet, here we are now in the state of the LBGTQIAs and whatnot. And yet, we can't see, you know, it's one thing to be of an alternative sexuality. You're not, you know, the straight little line of morality that many of us have been manipulated to be structured in. But when you uh, are so far out of that box that you don't do as I do as I say, because we are the elite, you know, yeah, you know, and yet Clyde was at the little meeting that the rappers used to talk about that may or may not have occurred back in an era where hip hop was going somewhere in a positive manner, and then all of a sudden there was this secret meeting with these somebody or another who called them up into their crib and said, "Okay, anybody that you know ain't down for this, you can leave now, but you know I advise you to understand that if you speak any word of this, well, you know your whole genetic existence cease to exist, not just you. You know we don't get down, so let that be known." But on the other side, hey man, I'm gonna make you an offer. I want y'all to really get into this gangster rapism era. I don't want to see no good. Matter of fact, all of y'all, what we gonna do now is you want to make a record. Don't bring me those 9, 12 cuts that you really want the people to hear about. Man, give me all you got, man. You know, every doggone thing, just, you know, 20, 30 thing. We've got all of this. You know what? We really think you should do this right here. You know, 1 minute you're an artist, and the next minute you're a slave to the rhythm. The only few people who've basically been able to avoid some of that stuff are some of the people who are not necessarily hogtied into this Americanized structure that these hitmen basically created and organized and basically do you know Whitney Houston is Whitney Houston's daddy, but Sister Houston and auntie, she ain't related to them. They already know that, you know. They already knew that really honestly being that they were, you know, a queen mother, you know, executors of, you know, this Whitney's uh career and whatnot. They basically sold her off for keep us active. We could do no wrong. You know, do what you want with her. And Clyde basically, there's no evil or type of pimp than a gay one, because the violence that they wreak on women are not even as vicious as some people want to say men are. Nobody would hurt somebody that they adore, and yet nobody would have a disgust in someone unless the one thing they can't do is do what they do better. And yet that secret order of these Epstein types exists. And Clyde and all of them, at this point in time, it was a good thing for him to go on and check out at 97, because if he'd lasted to 100, they'd have to kill Diddy and a whole bunch of other folk too, in order to just shut them up from trending so much about the reality that, hey, man, they've been at this stuff for a long time. I mean, Jerry Lee Lewis and Elvis, and we ain't gonna talk about people who are at the young and youngins, but the life of doggone uh what's her name? Shirley Dimples, the dimple chick. Yeah. People would use, oh man, you could be in like Flynn, and yet Errol Flynn was notorious pedo and whatnot. But we're not gonna get into all of these, I mean, just the mere fact that Rock Hudson came out and Nancy Reagan, the pill queen herself, lost her mind. Never watched the first lady totally eliminate his existence. I will not speak about that. That was a bad era in time, and the LBGTQ, transition. It did a lot more harm than good, just for the mere fact we will not talk about him. He is still the man who is the Doris Day and all these people loved out. The women that married Clyde Davis and these hitmen, how did they feel when he decides to write his tell-all biography and says, man, not that I woke up one day and decided, I like a little dick in my life. No. You just don't come up with that shit. It's born in you. It's in you. We already know that Zionistic trait comes with a certain kind of freedom, expression, desire, and a passion to explore, to boldly go where no man has ever gone before. And yet, it being biblically allowed because, hey, man, it's just cattle. God made humans biodegradable for a reason. And a lot of people cannot really handle the level of honesty, truth, gangster, dark, and coldness that exists. And yet, we in an HR state of mind are conditioned to learn a better way of being more nice to the other people who are a little bit more sensitive about the mere fact that they feel the need to basically disrupt the basic order of comfort that has been designed, just because, well, what you do behind your doors is just fine, but leave me and my kids and all that shit out of it. You don't need to flaunt your shit at every given turn, as if in the mere fact that, even within the LBGT, I'm also associated with, I find issue in the mere fact that, I have nothing against transitioners or trannies or this, that, and the other, but why the hell we got to kiss these white trannies asses when we can't get no black trannies with the same audacity being allowed to be in the same manner without them saying nigga, and Clyde Davis. back in the era when I was doing many things for many people, uh, I found myself in the company of, some newly situated, industry people named Bobby Brown. Man, I always envied, admired the whole concept that became Bobby at that moment. Before prerogative, but after he released himself from a a Don Kingish management environment that the other boys were still left in until he bottomed out too. Y'all just Clyde Davis is gone. And if I had one wish right now, I would wish that Bobby would sleep a little bit more comfortable tonight, knowing that motherfucker is gone. Because I recall way back in the era where, when he was at his tops and whatnot, and he had bought the Mike Thievis mansion, and man, there's some memories I got that's in his book that most people don't believe that I can vouch for. But I have been blessed enough to be in and around a lot of very unique and interesting individuals in our transitional life in a state where it's kind of like I was there, but nobody seen me. And I know nobody seen me because, well, I was never in a state to be seen, but I've basically been in and out and unscathed due to the mere fact that, well, my first memory of actually physically being in contact with Clive is during one of our Jack the Rapper industry kind of dinner kind of things, and he was there, and this motherfucker was cutting up this little. All I knew is he was a little pompous white dude around all these black folks kissing his butt, and for some reason he expected for me to be a bow down state, and I mean, only I was me and prettier, and still, in throes of this leather existence that holds the character of whom I am as Amps Are Easy. And so instinctually, one of my biggest problems and complaints has always been the mere fact that my filter sucks. I wish I could really get a better handle on my filter, and it probably would have saved me a lot of discomfort that I've created on my own, and willfully so enough to accept so many people who befriend me and find a need to sit back and say some real truth is, sometimes you're your own enemy. Sometimes, just come on, man. Really? And I'm going, man, if I could stop this crazy train enough to be able to prevent myself from representing the myself that I have always been, that'd be fine. And Clyde Davis is a perfect good example because that night he was irking the fuck out of me, and I was sitting back and see. It was also around that time. I was still, doing some things, whatnot, new Bob and whatnot. But it was just at that moment. He was at a point in time where Whitney was still just a 12-inch single singer chick. That a lot of producers were remixing and making some really great club music tracks. And I mean versions and versions, and yet she stayed up on the charts because she was also Clive's bitch. And I mean personal stash to such a degree that I caught on to his character that early enough that he said something out at me, and I went off and I said, "Look here, man, you little gay wannabe pimp ass little, I see where you at, and you ain't gonna mess with me like that because see, I ain't gonna doggone sit back and do no bowling on you. I'll spank your little ass, put your ass back in your place because, well, as a sadist, and whatnot, and having a certain kind of trait and character and crafts and a leather lifestyle, I was trained on men who desired that man pain that was on some gladiator shit and had nothing to do with, oh, child, let's do some rubbing after. No, they just wanted, ugh. Now dudes hire strippers and sex workers and whatnot because and take their chances because, well, as long as they do whatever they do with them, they'll pay them to shut their mouth, go away, and allow them to still keep an image of masculinity, even though they, enjoying sucking doggone strap-ons and taking it. And before anybody goes, ew, understand that at a certain point of realizing the gladiators and a lot of the he-men that many of us in society have always conditioned ourselves to believe is the ultimate image of heterosexuality, of manhood, of masculinity. And yet now in today's age, a lot of people are really numb over just the mere fact that they just don't want to hear it. And he is too, and he is too. Oh, stop, man. Not Obama. Oh my God. You know what? I just can't see. I don't think I can respect a man who that likes men more than women like men. And yet, Clyde Davis did more women, sisters, black women, black folks, dirtier. In the process, Aretha couldn't get her, fought it for a long time. He openly treated her like black folks let everybody treat the lady who won the first Oscar that was in Gone with the Wind, or it was a maid. NAACP did that greatness for black greatness. Until maybe just recently. And that's by default because the boule-ish people of color supported something that wasn't just foundationally representing of all y'all. And Clive Davis utilized that best. And he handpicked every image of what we are now struggling to still keep in a manner that they've earned in their craft and music shit. People don't want to like Kanye. They don't want to like Diddy. They don't want to like R. Kelly. And yet, they don't want to know. Like a lot of people who got real nervous when people start saying we're going to bring out a whole lot of what we got on the era of freaking. We got real lucky with this whole thing of video and recording and whatnot. I'll tell you some good stuff. Your greats behind you are at peace, and knowing that if we had the amount of on-time access of the social media and whatnot that exists today, 92% of all that you find to be holy would have already been busted. We really now are struggling in between need to know and don't need to have that much. Too much information now is more dangerous for people who, I don't want to go that far. I just want to stay here. The matrix is real. Only it's not the zeros and ones that you feel. It's the ones that you don't see that exist in and around you on any given day. It's not just wokeness. It's the mere fact that they say once it's seen or known, you can't unknow it, can't unsee it, but you can fake the funk and the company of others who would rather you stay on topic and not necessarily, mess up And please don't tell that boy there ain't no Santa Claus. It'd be hard trying to deal with that doggone boy, man. I use that all year long to keep him good. If you don't be good, then Santa ain't gonna bring you nothing. You go around there and you tell him that little white man ain't gonna doggone bring nothing to you, and you know what? Clyde Davis was the Santa for what not just created Atlanta, but what created what all of these new folks know or think they know about the whole industry. That prior to the Hitmen taking over all of it, the greatness that we had of what we called the industry of music and entertainment and whatnot was organic. It was personal. You gave your dollar to someone who entertained you, and that person got every cent of it, and it moved because that's what money was made for. And yet, we now live in a situation where more people are more uncomfortable with the mere fact that it's not our money, it's Clive's money. It's not our industry, it's the Hitmen's industry. It's not our music or culture, it's the culture that Clyde allowed you to have. Everybody loved Whitney. Oh, Epic Records. He made Epic Records just to doggone shut Whitney up and hopefully keep her from going back to Bobby, who at that particular time in Atlanta was one of the only young, up and coming black artists who owned his own shit at that time. And there were lots of people who were like, man, she tried to run from him. This is not what I hear, but what? There was a day sitting at the Thieves Mansion during the era where young Bobby was young and powerful and just really honestly living La Vida Loca. And we were all basically there trying to keep that young boy afloat and the whole nine because he deserved all of that. And 90% of what still exists in Atlanta were first purchases that Bobby had. Before then, there was a bunch of rednecks and hillbillies that, you know, wouldn't have had that shit at all, but he soiled it like the Thieves Mansion. Anywho, and so we all sitting there and, we're like, where Bobby at? He's upstairs somewhere. Didn't have an idea that he had company. So he walked down, eyes cool brown, happy as a jaybird because he got these two doggone women that look like they just put it on him. I mean, on him. And he's sitting back there and they're like, the fuck? And so he's sitting back there and it's like, okay, so Lord Jesus, what these women done did to this poor boy. Hopefully she ain't robbed him. They ain't robbed him or whatnot. And they still got him at, damn. He's like, man, it is good to be the king, man. Y'all serious about this? And they was like, we so serious that we got on a knee, Robin and Whitney, dead ass about what they did. And it's like, and all this is yours. If you just save me, Bobby, from that man, Clyde, he had no idea. None. He was just at his blackest, most proudest point, and knowing that these sisters just gave him the treatment, for the low price or whatever they indulged in. But then down in the big room at the Thieves Mansion, Bobby sitting around there, high as Cooter Brown, and his mind blown, still seeing good cootie, Tweety birds, and the whole nine. Ain't none of them washed up. And all of a sudden his phone rang. He happened to have that newfangled speakerphone thing. So he's like, man, put the damn thing on speaker. Who the hell is calling me? All of a sudden, on the other side of that phone is, where my bitch at? Where my bitch at? I know she's down there. You're like, hey, hold up. It's my phone. Bobby Brown. It's It's my phone. Who the hell gonna call my house on my phone? They didn't say, hey, may I talk to, or hello, I am, or this, that, and the other. No, the fuck you coming off with some shit like that up in here? And he like, look, man, where's my bitches? You better tell that bitch she better get her ass back here to goddamn New York before I have, and she was gonna pay for it, and this, that, and the other. And at this point, he like, oh, and you looking for, ain't no bitches up in my crib. This is Bobby Brown. Ain't no bitches up in here. Ain't nothing but, man, beautiful sisters that deserve respect and not to be doggone treated like your asses seem to be talking out there, and I got her all over me. And he's like, man, I don't give a fuck. This under you tell my bitch she better get. Hey, no, bruh, you sounded like your ass is a pimp named Clyde Davis. You don't know. You know who the fuck you're talking to like that. Man, fuck you, man. You faggot ass punk sitting around here calling people. I know who the hell you are. You that motherfucking sissy ass, punk ass, motherfucking fairy ass, motherfucking Dave. At this point, Whitney's like, oh my God, what is going on, man? Oh shit, I'm fucked up. This is like a goddamn scene from the cartoon. The name slipped back because she's sitting around there. He has no freaking clue when he said, "Where's my bitch?" He was serious. He didn't realize how deep that shit was until they made a special years later with him and her out on the road, and they were in London. They went to Harold's. While they was up in Harold's, the owner of Harold's comes down because man, Whitney's in here. I'm coming directly down, and this is the owner of one of the richest doggone department stores in the UK. He comes down and, oh, it's so good to see you again. And Whitney's on some, ooh, hey, slow down. Do you know I'm married? But he's Muslim rich, Arab rich, so he held his horses a little. Oh, really? Oh, really? And then she says, oh, no, and this is my man, my husband, Bobby. And he's like, oh, respectfully speaking. Oh, well, if that case, I came down here and I was thinking, shit, I'm going to need me some Egyptian Spanish fly to keep up with this good time that, that's down here, and I wouldn't have come down to expect, for it to be, respectfully now, a lady, because she's married. So he reaches in his pocket and he pulls out these like 3 pills and he goes, then you will need this. Then no, this is yours. This is your woman. Then here, take this as a gift and a token for me. And he's like, what the fuck is this? He's like, it's Egyptian Spanish fly. At that point, Bobby was once again pissed because that whole era in time, he kept finding out how deep this rabbit hole called Whitney and Clive was. And a lot of what he wanted to care for, because this shit just didn't make no damn sense. Didn't help the mere fact that Clive was so goddamn powerful that he made Arista Records just to shut up and gave her an album and all of the 12-inch mixes that she had made for all these other people in the discos that she'd been, getting charted and hanging out with and whatnot, were put on this first album. She didn't have a new, interesting song on that first album. That shit was old, but they pushed that shit in Epic Records. And Clive put work in there. They threw some other folk on there, so much so that you never would have thought. Had it not been for Whitney, wouldn't have been no Epic Records. Didn't need one. It was a conglomerate. RCA, SEMA Distribution, was all those other record companies outside of what Warner and all those people own. That's it. All the Hitmen got all of the major conglomerate music things, and their only purpose is to buy out all the talent everywhere and then put these A-list people they got in their pocket, the Stings, the Janets, the Michaels, stuff like that, up on the chart. Stay there, make your money. We now know where we're talking with the people that are out there, and yet we can, recall at least a handful of people in your own neighborhood or environment that they had what they got, and yet never get it. And they sign and they get them all stuck into now they're into them for not just a penny or a pound, but now, they're so deep in there that they can't even think about asking for more because you already cannot be a musician or an artist without them for the rest of your life. You're 10, 12 albums in deep and had, and you ain't even got the first one out because they still want the 30, 40 tracks they want to pick through to basically decide what they want to debut you at. And yet, these record stores will never, never, never see a copy. They just be dying for it. We couldn't bootleg this stuff. It was like that. No matter how much these dudes had stuff that was banging, all they had was local hookups. Their money came because somebody paid them to come and entertain them, but they couldn't sell it unless it came out of their trunk. Master P was real good at that shit, and he was slick enough to fool them at their own game. They really was trying to doggone slow down the mere fact that he was charting and making loot. And he was like, hey, let me get this whole group of this. And he built that up. And he was like, yeah, okay, you got me. But it's a whole crew. You want my crew? You got to get all of them individually. By the time they got to Lil Wayne, they was like, shit. They ain't broke. Clive Davis. Clive Davis got Diddy. Let me tell you something. During this era and time of me doing Jack the Rappers and whatnot, I'll never forget. Almost got kicked out. One time that I almost got kicked out. And I got, and I'll never forget it because it was during the era. JD, Dupree. He was just coming out. His first little production was Silk Times 11. Hammer was out and strong. Luke was doing his thing and whatnot. Gangster rap was starting to get a little too sticky. And yet there was this new artist and production company that was coming out. Dope thing, but they had the dopest, most interestingly controversial poster that they were having of it. And nobody saw it coming per se. And I remember it was me, Ed Lover, this chick named Kat, who was like the person who was like really pushing Yo MTV stuff and all of that, all that were out there. And I'll never forget it because Jazzy Faye back then was actually one of MC Hammer's dancers. And he was dressed up like Kwame, with the polka dots and everything. And he would always joke about how he's a hip hop polka dot Asiatic dancer. And it was dope because he really was a good dancer. He stays damn near the same size, only slimmer. And yet you wouldn't, know how far Jazzy was back in talent. Kind of like the other dude with Goody Mob and then, oh man. Anywho, Clyde, Diddy. So me and them was out there. And so we was thinking, yo, this is some dope ass posters. Okay. We'll pass them out because, we're going to support my boy. What's wrong with that? The poster was Puffy's very first poster. And it was a poster of his son, young son, who was wearing a piece of his Sean John draws. He was in his Shine combat boots, standing in them like a little boy, standing in them. Had his daddy's chain on him with no shirt, just his drawers, the boots, and the chain, and he had his fingers up like a gun. And the title said, "The Next Generation of Bad Motherfuckers. Bad Boy Entertainment." Boom. Them uppity, older, black industry exec folks saw that image and lost their mind. Who the fuck put this up there? This, that, you get that damn trash down. That is fucking insulting. They got that little boy in that thing and he's holding up a gun like that. And that's right at the point that everybody was trying to doggone, protest against the goddamn gangster rap and this, that, and the other. And yet that was the image of so many things that was wrong from the jump that was perfect from the jump for Puffy to become P. Diddy and all these other shits that nobody would have ever thought. That back then, when they would show their whole entire ass and literally threatening youngins to remove that image from their industry. I don't care who it is, remove it from their industry, and get in that judgmental kind of state. And yet, about the time that Diddy became associated with Clive, he was paying all their doggone bills and the retirement, put their kids through college and the whole nine, just throughout the industry. Everybody, oh man, P. Diddy, this, that, and the other. They sitting back right there going, man, I'm just so glad I wasn't on the guest list because I wanted to go. I knew that shit was fly like that, but I ain't as young as I used to be, and this, that, and the other. Except for TD Jakes, who was swallowing and just hoping that and he's just lucky he didn't go the next step to the Epstein's. But that was some other stuff. Diddy was just doing Epstein light, but that was for his other boys, the Hitmen. All of them, the Hitmen. That's how they had to go back and was worried about removing all images of them before they locked this boy up. And hopefully they can blame it on him being a woman beater when these motherfuckers was perfectly okay with treating these products as more beneficial to me dead than alive. By owning all rights to everything that they were, and now being able to release it because, well, shit, I ain't got to pay her. Clive Davis, 97 or whatnot. I'm saying these things because I don't think a lot of you are interested, and just don't think of it, as right or wrong or this, that, and the other. Just stop and just imagine where life was just a few years back before you knew how powerful a motherfucker was that far back. I mean, they're your mothers' mothers. Changed the whole culture. Black folks, we went from finding a good song to dance to knowing what a slow dance was, to wanting to go out and see a band, to not giving a fuck about who else is up on the stage as long as that artist is your favorite artist. You don't even think about musicians, you just say artists. And yet, we pumping out some of the best freaking artists, instrumentalists, daily, weekly, yearly, from our schools and our colleges, the bands and whatnot, that have to put away their craft and go work at Wendy's or a college degree, assistant manager, or at Home Depot or whatnot, when they're probably one of the best trumpeters or keyboardists or whatnot. I mean, if this happened further back, there would have been no Herbie Hancocks or Miles Davises or whatnot. Clyde is a beast. The Hitmen were a beast. They took over everything. You couldn't get nothing. So the day you can't get nothing on the radio. It's way past payola. You ain't got it to pay like that unless you got it to pay like that. Now, in order for your concert to basically be on the doggone radio, you can pay them all you want to, but you still gonna have to guarantee them so many seats. Is also payment too. Yeah, all right. How many seats you gonna give us? We'll give away seats. We'll have a little campaign, have seats to the show, and you're gonna want it, love it. Remember back in the earlier control Janet Jackson eras. She was one of those people who used to get the first 1,500 rows. Puffy. Puffy was where I saw this concept in reality. Puffy would do his tour, MJZ and them, and they would have a stipulation where out of all the ticket sales for a sold out fucking Coliseum, they get the first 50, 100 seats in cash every night from every show. That would be handed to them in shopping bags all the time. Hey. Now, before pop artists got to that level, before the Hitmen, people made theirs a little bit more honest. Watched a dedication for a street recently for Jimi Hendrix. They were saying, man, he's with doggone little Richard fired him. No, he readjusted. Then he was with the Ozzies. He was with them. He was with that. And it wasn't until he went to Europe and basically dazed and amazed them over there that he became the Hendrix that everybody knows him to be. Problem is, while we want to make it a good thing, that was the last time that a lot of people believe that everything that they know from some of their most popular instrumentalist musicians who played a similar instrument came by their amazement in the craftsmanship of Hendrix. These new kids, like all of this doggone guitar music, this, that, and the other, will never say, man, if it wasn't for Hendrix, man, if it wasn't for this guy. Now everybody wants to be a rapper because they don't know any other doggone image. Lucrative. And yet, the few people who are out here, Masonically inclined, hooked up, are the people who, they work on tracks the whole nine. I've made a couple of bucks here and there back in my playing percussion in Atlanta days that I've done little bits and tracks. A really cool thing about this music industry. While they're doing music and they're like, oh man, let's get somebody to lay down this kind of track. And you go in there and they give you $200 and something a track. As long as it takes to put that track down. You leave, they get your check. Check don't take 2 weeks before you get it. It don't bounce from the record company. And yet, there's no contractual promise that you're going to end up noted on the back of their music, because all of that belongs to people who run the check. Musical welfare, slavery, and whatnot. Reason why Bobby Brown and a whole lot of people, he saved his people. He wasn't like Tina Turner. Tina Turner ran off and let that doggone Clive Davis of UK. Married her. Smartest thing he ever did. Because now what's his is his. What's hers is his. Sat back and made this whole image of, man, fuck that doggone Ike. What's love got to do with it? All this other stuff. Blah, 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 blah. I asked old Anna Mae, lived out her last days swearing up and down that she ain't never had an English, American, black accent. She couldn't imagine herself being foundationally, and yet you saw the beginning of the story. You never saw how what made her popular, what made her powerful, what made her a star. Was it Ike? That dude over the UK saying, you know what? I can get this chick, and I and my other boys, the other hitmen, they'll let me too. And they did that. Well, I couldn't get no love. Tina got more money at the end. And then all of a sudden, nobody questioned how she just, nobody wondered why her family over here didn't get the proceeds because her husband got it all. The Clive Davis of the UK. See, this image of the concept of this Zionistic mentality that has grown and gained control, power, and whatnot through the manipulation and exploitation of others that are just chasing the dream, only for them to be in this current state where they talk so down on them that they truly honestly believe, you know what? All of you people are more valuable to me dead than you are alive. You want to know why? Because when you're alive, your mouth is moving. Clyde Davis died rich. Rich like, well, 350 million. Don't sound like nothing till you think about the mere fact that all of the artists who found themselves at certain points in their startup of struggling with the mere fact that they really need to go back and go through all of this other stuff again because, well, they got to pay these bills. And the IRS is up their whole entire butt. That 300 something $million would have cleared all of that had it not been for the fact that, well, Clyde got his, and all expenses that he exists on are from all the people he made. And he's honest. They look at you in your face and go, man, I own you. I own all of them, man. I know you might think you love them, this and that, but if you knew what, man, the amount of work I had to do, man, the amount of drugs I had to keep on, people don't seem to understand how that Phil Spector dude was just as doggone brilliant when he basically did the wall of sound and this, that, and the other. But he also created Ike and Turner, Tina, Marvin, Rick James, lots of Tower Power, all these other people that he mastered the art of recording, the art of what people hear that attracts them to these artists. And they're like, I like the way the EQ, the sound, the vibe, the projection you get from someone who's struggling with their addiction. And no matter how many jokes people want to doggone make about Whitney strung out on crack, none of them ever want to stop saying or listening to, and like they struggle with R. Kelly. And yet, they can't really, if you told people that what you're attracted to ain't music, it's energy, it's manipulation, it's something that's up under. My uncle George Clinton has a phrase. He said, man, you know what funk is? People are like, so what makes funk different? Well, instruction. They're like, what is instruction? He's like, well, funk is the sound that exists between two notes. And they're like, hold on, 1, 2. So you're saying in between, so it's like 1.5? Well, or it could be -2. No, either way it is, it's the and that thing that You can't really put on a computer and say it's like that because it's a feeling. And everybody else has got that nod, but it's the nod. It's the movement in between start and finish. That's fun. That's funky. And all those other artists were funky too. And yet, Clive Davis could kill Funkadelic. Wish that he could have more Earth, Wind, and Fire if it wasn't for the mere fact that he don't need, man, being a musician and an artist is expensive because now I got to pay him 2 checks. I can basically, do AI before AI was exposed for what has existed during the whole era of the Hitmen. They got people to believe in hype, pop, over everything else, and yet totally neglect the mere fact that talent's everywhere. Shaka Khan became Shaka Khan. Rufus. Lots of people had to feature and get out of there. When they featured and got out of there, they no longer became musicians. They were now artists. And the band and the music and people that they grew up with trying to find that fame got Clive Davis. They got Hitmen. I sat back and would remember how in working for these record companies and realizing as a reporter for Billboard, asking them to report for Billboard, sitting back there and realizing, man, there's some dope ass doggone cuts that I'm playing right out there that people can't get enough of. I can't put on the charts. Because even if I wanted to, they can't afford the doggone do the supply. And a lot of people who ain't got the doggone means to promote it too don't have permission because there's still somebody filling their pockets with them. Hey, I need for you to keep Janet out and Sting out until we can get a new album out for them. But they still need to keep tracking. Why? Because they are still priming the pump. They are still squeezing their stardom for all that it's got and leaving them with the taxes. Keeping them at a point where no matter how rich you think you are, more money, more problems. Clive Davis. Clive Davis never had money problems. All the people he had money problems. Never did. Did he? Nobody can understand how the Hitmen, men like Clive Davis, are the creators of a corrupt agenda that now is just totally morally awkward and uncomfortable for people to really think that's the ship that they was running and been running all the time. And when Kanye kept trying to tell you and still telling y'all this, that, and the other, it got to the point where just like Jesus, it could only go as far as the crucifix. At that point, you can no longer doggone deal with a bunch of people, man. It's going to doggone turn on you quicker than anything else when you sit back going, man, if you just, last poets always said, man, we are scared of revolution. There are people still to this day that are scared to not glorify man, that they knew, oh, he's always good to me. But they knew this mother, you want to stay on Clive Davis's good side. You don't want to be like mother. Don't end up like Whitney. Yeah. I'm putting all this out just because for me, it's therapeutic. You know, that's it. It's therapeutic. I know when I go back to look at this, I'm going to just hope and pray that all of the other conditions that make this presentation exist are provided in a manner that allows whomever you are to like, share, subscribe, and donate if you can, because nothing says like you like cash and well. I'd ask Clive, but he's gone. You know, there's some days I really just want to just I really just want to just wish that, well, it's like the Matrix. I don't want to wake you up because, it's taken me until the day of this dude's death to actually get that off my chest over the mere fact that I have had and have adapted a certain disgust for the legacy that's been left on all of us and our people as to how we have evolved in the shepherdism, in the manipulation, in the Zionist expectation that is the Hitmen and Clive and so many of them that still have, bequeathed to the pawn and taught everybody else. This is how you treat them. You treat them in any other kind of way, man. They run over you. You don't want to do that. I had to go out and find another Whitney because Whitney was just all because this Clive Davis was true to his word when he said, look, I will ruin you if you don't send my bitch back. Leave her the hell alone. I don't care what she asks you, how she do it, her, girlfriend, or whatever they do. They turn you out, this, that, and the other. I don't care. But I'd rather kill her than let you have her. And Bobby, blessed people never become unblessed. But it does feel awkward to live past your past. Kind of like the story of Lot. After Sodom and Gomorrah, after his wife and his two blonde virgin daughters, he tried to ended up raping them. After all that, still became a good person. They did good. And never did they write about, at any given moment, that he stopped and reflect on, man, I love my life, but for Clive Davis, who would have known? If it wasn't for these hitmen who manipulated massive amounts of morality out of cultures of people in this country, in this world, in this concept, to such a degree that only lately are we as purveyors of arts starting to more accept musicianship, artistry, and performance past just the exploitation of an image you can't totally get behind your children aspiring to. Clive Davis. If there was a descendant of any sorts in that vein of these hitmen, I only hope and pray that this great reset resets this bullshit that these people have created. You know what I'm saying? No? Well, like, share, subscribe. Be good to each other or yourself. Uh, wake up a little bit. Don't drink so much of the Kool-Aid. And just keep in mind, there's 97-year-old Mr. Charlie and his folks have been in your pockets like Lyndon B. Johnson killed your favorite president and then sat back and bamboozled you all. Like they tried to steal Essence Festival. You know, can't stop it because there's too many other people who would rather identify themselves unlike the people that Clive Davis picked to make who they are or who they were. For that reason, may you burn consistently in hell, Mr. Davis, just because, you know, did he? You good? Man, how do you stop this thing, crazy thing? Jane? Stop this crazy thing? All right, Streamline.